A chilling draft swept through the usually warm dining room as Emily's husband leaned across the table, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "Sign over the company to Kevin tonight, or I'm taking the kids and you'll never see them again." What he didn't know was that the contracts hidden in her home office safe had already ensured both her children and her company would remain protected, no matter what her husband and his brother had planned. The morning had started like any other holiday gathering in the Madison household. Emily awoke at dawn, her mind already racing with the day's preparations. At 36, she had achieved what many considered impossible, building multi-tech solutions from a small startup in her garage to a multi-million-dollar tech consulting firm while raising two beautiful children, Sophia and Nathan, ages 8 and 6. The scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee filled the air as Emily moved methodically through the kitchen, her caramel brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Guests would arrive in a few hours, her parents, her husband Richard's family, and a few close friends. It was their annual holiday tradition, one that Emily had maintained even as her company grew and demanded more of her time. "Need any help?" Richard appeared in the doorway, his 6-foot frame leaning casually against the wooden frame. His dark blonde hair was still tousled from sleep, blue eyes watching her with what she once would have called affection. Now, she recognized the calculation behind that gaze. "I've got it covered," Emily replied, her voice neutral despite the tension coiling in her stomach. "Could you make sure the kids are getting ready? Your brother and his wife will be here early to help set up." At the mention of Kevin, a flicker of something, anticipation, perhaps, crossed Richard's face before he nodded and disappeared upstairs. 3 months ago, Emily would have thought nothing of it. 3 months ago, she hadn't accidentally discovered the email chain between Richard and Kevin detailing their plans to wrestle control of multi-tech from her. 3 months ago, she had trusted her husband of 10 years. Emily's hands stilled on the dough she was kneading. The betrayal still felt like a physical wound, raw and pulsing with each reminder. Richard, who had been supportive when she started the company, who had claimed to be proud of her success, had been plotting with his brother to take everything she'd built. Kevin, with his MBA and corporate background, had always seemed envious of Emily's success. He had joined Multitech 2 years ago as chief operating officer at Richard's suggestion. Emily had welcomed him, believing in family and second chances after Kevin's previous business venture had failed. Now she understood it had been the first step in their plan. "Mom, Aunt Lisa is here." Sophia's excited voice broke through Emily's thoughts. She quickly washed her hands and composed herself, pushing aside the dark memories. Lisa wasn't just her sister-in-law, she was Emily's closest friend and confidant. She was also the only person who knew what Emily had discovered and what she had done to protect herself. Lisa swept into the kitchen, her dark curls bouncing as she moved. Unlike her husband Kevin, Lisa had always been genuine in her affection for Emily. "How are you holding up?" she whispered, embracing Emily tightly. "Managing," Emily replied quietly. "Everything's in place. Daniels confirmed the papers are filed and ready." Lisa nodded, her eyes darting toward the hallway to ensure they weren't overheard. "Kevin's been acting strange all week. Whatever they're planning, I think it's happening today." Emily's heart stuttered, but she forced a calm smile as footsteps approached. "Perfect timing. You can help me with the pie crusts." The hours passed in a blur of preparations, arrivals, and forced pleasantries. Emily moved through it all with practiced efficiency, her smile never quite reaching her eyes as she greeted Kevin with a hug that felt like embracing a viper. He was handsome in the same way as Richard, tall, athletic, with the same charming smile that Emily now recognized as a mask. "Emily, the company's year-end numbers looking good?" Kevin asked over appetizers, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Better than projected," she answered simply, unwilling to share more. "We can discuss business after the holidays." Kevin's smile tightened. "Of course. Family first, right, Rich?" Richard nodded, clapping his brother on the shoulder. "Always." By late afternoon, the house was filled with the warm chaos of family, children running through halls decorated with twinkling lights, the rich aroma of the holiday meal wafting from the kitchen, laughter and conversation flowing freely. For brief moments, Emily could almost forget what was coming, could almost pretend this was just another family gathering. Until she caught Richard and Kevin disappearing into Richard's home office, their expressions grim and determined. Emily excused herself from a conversation with her mother and followed silently, positioning herself near the partially open door. "She's not going to just hand it over, Rich." Kevin's voice was tight with frustration. "She will when I explain the situation." Richard's response was calm, confident. "Emily's weakness has always been the kids. She'll sign when she understands the alternative." Emily's blood ran cold at the casual cruelty in her husband's voice. The man she had loved, the father of her children, was willing to use Sophia and Nathan as pawns in his power play. "What if she calls your bluff?" Kevin pressed. "Courts favor mothers. Not when the mother is painted as a workaholic who neglected her family for her company." Richard's response was immediate, rehearsed. "We've been documenting everything, her late nights, missed school events, business trips. With your testimony about her erratic decision-making at Multitech, we can make a case." Emily pressed a hand against her mouth to stifle her gasp. They had been planning this for months, maybe years, gathering evidence, preparing to strip her of everything that mattered. The betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined. "And if she still refuses?" Kevin sounded doubtful. "Then Plan B. The board votes tomorrow on the acquisition proposal. With your shares and mine combined with Grayson's, we have enough to force it through. She'll be out either way. But this would be cleaner." Richard's voice dropped lower. "I have the papers ready. After dinner, when everyone's relaxed, I'll get her alone." Emily backed away silently, her mind racing. She had anticipated a move against her company. It was why she had met with her lawyer and secured protection for her majority share. But she hadn't expected Richard to use their children as leverage. The thought made her physically ill. Dinner was an exercise in control. Emily maintained her composure as dishes were passed around the extended table, as compliments on the food were offered, as Richard played the role of devoted husband and father with an Oscar-worthy performance. The food tasted like ash in her mouth, but she smiled and nodded and pretended everything was normal. "Emily, you've outdone yourself this year," her father-in-law commented, raising his wine glass in her direction. "Thank you, James," she replied, accepting the compliment with a gracious nod. "It's always special having everyone together." Richard squeezed her hand on the table, a gesture that once would have comforted her. Now it took everything in her not to pull away from his touch. "We're lucky to have her," he said, his gaze moving meaningfully toward Kevin. After the meal, as everyone migrated to the living room for coffee and dessert, Richard approached her in the kitchen where she was arranging cookies on a serving tray. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" he asked, his voice low. "In the office?" Emily nodded, her heart pounding. This was it, the confrontation she had been preparing for since discovering their plot. She followed Richard down the hallway to his office, noting how he closed the door firmly behind them. The room was dim, lit only by the desk lamp and the multicolored glow of the Christmas tree visible through the window. Richard moved to his desk, withdrawing a folder from the drawer. In the muted light, his features seemed harder, unfamiliar. "Emily, we need to discuss Multitech," he began, his tone businesslike. "What about it?" she asked, feigning ignorance as she perched on the edge of an armchair. Richard spread several documents on the desk. "Kevin has received an offer to purchase the company. It's an excellent deal, more than fair market value. The board is voting tomorrow, but with your signature tonight, we can avoid any unpleasantness." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Unpleasantness?" "Richard, that company is my life's work. Why would I sell without even reviewing these offers properly?" A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Because it's what's best for our family. For our future. Kevin has the experience to negotiate the best terms. You'd still receive a significant payout. And if I want to remain CEO of the company I built from nothing?" Emily kept her voice steady, watching his reaction carefully. Richard's expression hardened. "Then you're not thinking of what's best for Sophia and Nathan." There it was, the threat, veiled but unmistakable. Emily felt her skin grow cold. Explain what you mean by that. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to that sinister whisper. Sign over the company to Kevin tonight, or I'm taking the kids and you'll never see them again. The words hung in the air between them, changing everything irrevocably. In that moment, Richard became a stranger, an enemy wearing the face of the man she had loved. Emily rose slowly, moving toward the desk. You would use our children as bargaining chips? She kept her voice low, conscious of the guests just down the hall. I'm doing what needs to be done, Richard replied, pushing the papers toward her. Sign these, and we can go back to being a happy family. Refuse, and I file for divorce tomorrow with full custody. Your choice. Emily stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the ambition and cruelty that had always lurked beneath his charming exterior. She reached for the papers, flipping through them slowly while gathering her thoughts. You know, she said finally, her tone conversational, 3 months ago, this might have worked. Richard's brow furrowed in confusion. What? Your plan. It might have worked 3 months ago, before I found the emails between you and Kevin. Emily set the papers down, watching understanding dawn on her husband's face. Before I saw how you'd been planning to take my company and my children. You had no right, Richard began, but Emily cut him off. No right to protect what's mine? I had every right. Her voice remained calm, controlled. Just as I had every right to meet with my lawyer and secure both my majority share in Multitech and file preemptive custody papers documenting your plan to use our children as leverage in a business dispute. The color drained from Richard's face. You're bluffing. Emily smiled, the expression cold and certain. Call Stanley Daniels if you don't believe me. The board can't vote without my approval. I've restructured my shares. And no judge will grant you custody after seeing the evidence I've gathered of your conspiracy. You bitch, Richard hissed, mask completely dropped now. You've ruined everything. No, Richard. You did that when you plotted against me. Emily stepped back from the desk. Now we have guests waiting, and I'd like to enjoy the rest of this evening with my children. We can discuss divorce terms after the holidays. She turned to leave, but Richard grabbed her arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. This isn't over. The door swung open before Emily could respond, revealing Lisa with a concerned expression. Everything okay in here? She asked, her gaze moving between them, lingering on Richard's grip on Emily's arm. Richard released her immediately, forcing a smile. Just a small disagreement about business. Nothing important. Lisa didn't look convinced. Your father's asking for you, Richard. Something about the football game? With a final glare at Emily, Richard straightened his shirt and pushed past Lisa into the hallway. When his footsteps had faded, Lisa rushed to Emily's side. Did he threaten you? What happened? Emily exhaled shakily, the adrenaline making her lightheaded. Exactly what we expected. He wants the company and threatened to take the kids if I don't comply. Lisa's expression darkened. That bastard. And my husband. I can't believe Kevin would be part of this. Believe it, Emily said grimly. I need you to do something for me. Keep an eye on Richard around the children. I don't think he'd do anything rash tonight with everyone here, but I'm not taking chances. Lisa nodded firmly. I won't let them out of my sight. The rest of the evening unfolded in a strange, tense ballet. Richard maintained his facade of normalcy, though Emily caught the furious glances he exchanged with Kevin throughout the night. She focused on her children, savoring Sophia's detailed explanation of her school project and Nathan's excitement about the presents under the tree. As guests began to depart, exchanging warm hugs and promises to get together soon, Emily noticed Richard pulling Kevin aside for an intense, whispered conversation. Their expressions suggested the battle was far from over, but Emily felt strangely calm. She had prepared for this moment, had protected what mattered most. After the last guest had gone, leaving only Kevin and Lisa who were staying in the guest room, Emily found Richard in their bedroom, packing a suitcase. What are you doing? She asked, though the answer was obvious. I'm not staying here tonight, he replied without looking up. Not with someone who went behind my back and betrayed me. Emily almost laughed at the irony. That's rich, coming from you. Richard slammed the suitcase shut. You think you've won, but this is just beginning. I built that company with you. No, you didn't, Emily cut in sharply. You supported me initially, yes. But I built multi-tech. I worked 80-hour weeks while still taking care of our children. I secured the clients, developed the products, managed the growth. You were happy to enjoy the benefits of my success until you decided you deserved more. The board will side with Kevin, Richard insisted. They respect him. The board respects results, which I've delivered consistently for 8 years. Emily moved to the doorway, blocking his exit. And they'll respect me even more when they learn how you and Kevin tried to orchestrate a hostile takeover using my children as pawns. Richard's expression turned ugly. You wouldn't dare make this public. Try me. Emily's voice was steel. You misjudged me, Richard. You thought because I valued our family, because I tried to balance work with being a mother, that I was weak. That was your fatal error. For a moment, they stood in silent confrontation, the ruins of their marriage lying between them like shattered glass. Then Richard shouldered past her, dragging his suitcase down the hallway. Emily followed at a distance, watching as he paused at the children's rooms. Her heart clenched with fear, but he merely looked in at their sleeping forms before continuing downstairs. Kevin appeared in the living room, his expression thunderous. What's going on? Ask your brother, Emily replied coldly. Ask him how his plan to blackmail me with my own children failed spectacularly. Kevin's gaze darted between them. Rich! It's over, Richard snapped, yanking his coat from the closet. She knew. She's been 10 steps ahead this entire time. The realization that their scheme had been exposed seemed to hit Kevin like a physical blow. He sank onto the sofa, his face ashen. The board vote. Won't happen, Emily finished for him. Not without my approval. And as for your position at Multitech, consider today your last day. Your severance package will be generous. I'm not vindictive, but your access to company systems has already been revoked. Kevin's head snapped up. You can't do that. I already have. Emily remained perfectly composed. Richard, I assume you'll be staying with Kevin and Lisa tonight? From the staircase came Lisa's voice. Actually, I think I'll be staying here with Emily and the children. She descended slowly, a small suitcase in her hand. Kevin, we need to talk, but not tonight. Not after what you've done. The betrayal on Kevin's face would have been almost comical if the situation weren't so painful. Lisa, you knew about this? I found out when Emily did, Lisa replied quietly. And I've had 3 months to think about what kind of man would conspire to steal from family and use children as bargaining chips. I'm not sure I know you anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Richard yanked open the front door. This isn't over, Emily. Yes, it is, she replied simply. The divorce papers will be ready after the holidays. I suggest you find a good lawyer. After they had gone, the house seemed suddenly too quiet, too empty. Emily sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, her composure finally cracking as tears spilled down her cheeks. Lisa sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You were amazing, Lisa whispered. I don't think I could have faced them so calmly. Emily wiped at her tears. I had no choice. They were going to take everything, my company, my children. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't fight with everything I had? A normal one, Lisa assured her. Most people would have crumbled facing what you did. Emily leaned her head against the wall, exhaustion washing over her. What am I going to tell Sophia and Nathan? Their father just walked out on Christmas Eve. The truth, eventually, Lisa said. But for tonight, let them sleep. Tomorrow is still Christmas, and they deserve their joy. Emily nodded, drawing strength from her friend's presence. Thank you for staying. For choosing me over Kevin. It wasn't a choice, Lisa replied firmly. It was the only decent thing to do. The following morning arrived with soft snowfall and the excited squeals of children discovering presents under the tree. Emily watched them from the kitchen doorway, coffee cup clutched in her hands, her heart both heavy and hopeful. Where's Daddy? Nathan asked eventually, looking up from his new toy truck. Emily sat beside him, gathering both children close. Daddy had to go away for a while. We'll talk more about it later, but right now, he wants you to enjoy your Christmas. The lie tasted bitter, but she couldn't bear to shatter their holiday joy. Sophia, perceptive as always, studied her mother's face. Is it because of your work? I heard Uncle Kevin telling Daddy that your company was causing problems. Emily's heart clenched. Even the children hadn't been spared from their manipulation. No, sweetheart. My work isn't the problem. Sometimes adults disagree about important things, and they need space to figure it out. Will Daddy come back? Nathan's lower lip trembled. Emily hugged him tighter. I don't know, honey, but I promise you I will always be here. And we're going to be okay, the three of us. Later that day, as Lisa helped prepare a simpler Christmas dinner and the children played with their gifts, Emily's phone rang. It was Stanley Daniels, her lawyer. Merry Christmas, Emily, he said when she answered. I hate to disturb your holiday, but I thought you should know, Richard called me this morning demanding to see the custody documents you filed. Emily moved to the window, watching the snow fall gently on the backyard where summers had been spent as a seemingly happy family. And I confirmed their existence. He was displeased. Stanley's dry understatement almost made Emily smile. He's retained Patricia Morgan as counsel. She's good, Emily acknowledged. Morgan was one of the top divorce attorneys in the city. She is, Stanley agreed. But we have the facts on our side. The documented conspiracy alone undermines any custody claim he might make. Not to mention Lisa's willingness to testify about what she overheard. Emily watched a cardinal land on the bird feeder Sophia had helped her fill that morning, its bright red plumage stark against the white landscape. Will this get ugly, Stanley? It might, he admitted. But we've prepared for that. Your position at Multitech is secure. The shareholders have been privately briefed about the situation to prevent any surprises. As for custody, no judge will look favorably on a father who tried to use his children as leverage in a business dispute. After ending the call, Emily returned to the living room where Sophia was teaching Lisa to play her new board game and Nathan was constructing an elaborate tower of blocks. The scene was domestic, peaceful, everything her home should be without the shadow of betrayal hanging over it. Everything okay? Lisa asked, noting Emily's expression. It will be, Emily replied, joining them on the floor. Richard's lawyered up. Lisa squeezed her hand. We expected that. You're ready. Looking at her children, safe, happy, unaware of how close they had come to being pawns in their father's power play, Emily felt a surge of fierce protectiveness. Yes, I am. In the weeks that followed, Multitech thrived under Emily's continued leadership. The board, informed of Richard and Kevin's attempted coup, rallied behind her with unanimous support. Lisa filed for divorce from Kevin on grounds of emotional cruelty, a decision that strengthened the bond between the two women who now jokingly referred to themselves as sisters in survival. Richard's attempts to claim partial custody hit roadblock after roadblock as evidence of his conspiracy emerged. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with 20 years on the family court bench, was particularly unimpressed by the recorded conversations Lisa had secretly captured between Richard and Kevin discussing their plan to use the children as leverage. By spring, the divorce was finalized with terms heavily favoring Emily. Richard received supervised visitation rights, which he exercised sporadically before accepting a job offer overseas, running from the wreckage of his failed scheme. Kevin, blacklisted in their industry after the scandal quietly spread, relocated to the opposite coast to restart his career with a significantly reduced title and salary. On a warm evening in May, Emily sat on her patio watching Sophia and Nathan chase fireflies in the twilight. Lisa joined her, setting 2 glasses of wine on the table between them. You know what today is? Lisa asked, settling into the adjacent chair. Emily nodded. 6 months since I found those emails. 6 months since her world had shifted on its axis, forcing her to become someone stronger, more vigilant, more fiercely protective than she had ever imagined. Any regrets? Lisa studied her friend's profile in the fading light. Emily considered the question, watching her children's joyful faces as they captured the glowing insects in cupped hands before releasing them back into the gathering darkness. Only that I didn't see Richard and Kevin for who they really were sooner. Lisa raised her glass. To lessons learned. And battles won, Emily added, clinking her glass against Lisa's. As darkness settled fully over the yard, Emily called the children in for bedtime. Nathan ran to her immediately, wrapping small arms around her waist. Sophia followed more slowly, thoughtful as always. "Mom," she asked as Emily tucked her into bed. "Are you happier now that Dad's gone?" The question caught Emily by surprise. She sat on the edge of the bed, considering how to answer honestly without burdening her daughter with adult complexities. "I'm happier being true to myself," she said finally. "Sometimes people we love try to change us or take things that matter to us. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it's important." Sophia nodded solemnly. "Like when Jordan tried to take credit for my science project and I told the teacher." Emily smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Exactly like that. You were brave and honest, and I'm so proud of you." After both children were asleep, Emily returned to her home office, the space where she had first discovered the betrayal, where she had spent countless nights developing strategies to protect her family and her company. On the wall hung a new artwork Sophia had created for her birthday, a colorful painting of their family, Emily, Sophia, and Nathan, standing together beside a rainbow. "Our perfect family" was written across the bottom in childish handwriting. Emily traced the figures with her fingertip. Richard's absence from the portrait had been Sophia's choice, a silent acknowledgement that their family had been redefined. Not diminished, just different. Perhaps even stronger for having weathered the storm together. On her desk sat a framed photo from Multitech's early days, Emily in the garage that had served as her first office, surrounded by computer parts and looking exhausted but triumphant. It was a reminder of what she had built through determination and vision, what she had protected through courage and foresight. The company continued to expand, with 2 new major clients signed just last week. The attempted takeover, ironically, had forced Emily to re-examine every aspect of her business, finding inefficiencies and opportunities that might otherwise have gone unnoticed for years. As for her personal life, that was healing too, slowly but surely. The children asked about their father less frequently now, settled into their new normal with resilience that amazed her. Lisa had become a constant presence, their friendship deepening into something like sisterhood. And Emily herself had discovered reserves of strength she never knew she possessed. The holiday gathering that had marked the culmination of Richard and Kevin's betrayal now seemed like a distant memory, painful but instructive. This year, Emily would host again, filling her home with those who truly wished her well, who valued her for herself rather than what they could take from her. She closed her laptop and switched off the desk lamp, ready for rest after a productive day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments with her children. Emily moved through the darkened house, checking locks and turning off lights, secure in the knowledge that what she had built, both her company and her family, was protected, not by the strength of walls or legal documents, but by her own unwavering resolve. In the quiet of night, as moonlight spilled through windows onto familiar floors, Emily Madison, entrepreneur, mother, survivor, finally allowed herself to acknowledge a simple truth. She had not merely endured betrayal, she had transcended it. And in doing so, she had discovered that the greatest protection against those who would take what matters most is not suspicion or fear, but the courage to fight for what you love with everything you have.